Attention, Homer Simpson. Wake up, Homer.
Hey, what? Huh? What?
The Simpsons didn't just mirror American culture, it predicted it, piece by piece. A cartoon family from the 80s, written as quick satire, ended up drawing a blueprint of where society, politics, and even family life would go decades later. 13 moments stand out as nothing short of shocking, connecting directly to the world you and I live in right now. And once you see them, it completely changes the way you remember this harmless comedy. Let's break it down. Number 1, Simpsons roasting on an open fire. The very first full episode of The Simpsons was packaged as a Christmas special, but under the wrapping was something darker. Homer loses his holiday bonus.
However, for you semi-skilled workers, there will be no Christmas bonuses.
And just like that, the family can't afford gifts. On the surface, it's played for laughs, but the joke lands because it feels real. One setback, one cancelled check, and the entire household is scrambling. What stands out now is how that story quietly mirrors the fragility of middle-class life. The way Homer scrapes for cash, the way Marge hides financial stress. The episode predicted a future where gig work, shrinking paychecks, and rising costs keep families on edge. Their solution is love and loyalty, not a miracle of money. From the beginning, The Simpsons wasn't about holiday cheer at all. It was about a family fighting an economy already stacked against them, starting with Homer. Quick pause before we dive into the next hidden meaning. If you're enjoying this breakdown, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now. We've got even deeper Simpsons theories. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's next. Number 2, Homer as the everyman worker. Homer was never a role model. He was clumsy, short-tempered, and often lazy. But here's the thing, behind the slapstick, he stood in for workers who felt stuck in a cycle they didn't control. While sitcom dads before him had tidy jobs and perfect families, Homer clocked in at work he didn't respect, under bosses who didn't care. Early episodes show him cutting corners or nodding off when he should have been focused. It's funny on the surface, but it echoes a real truth. Surviving on low wages with little dignity drains anyone's spirit. Instead of thriving, Homer lurches from one mistake to another, showing alienation before we even had language for it. So Homer wasn't simple comic relief. He was a stand-in for burnout itself, years before the word became mainstream, and of course his cage was the nuclear plant. Number 3, the nuclear power plant equals corporate America.
I suppose that's normal background radiation, the kind you'd find in any well-maintained nuclear facility, or for that matter, playgrounds and hospitals.
Sorry.
Springfield's nuclear power plant isn't just backdrop, it's satire with teeth. The place looks high-tech from the outside, but inside, it's chaos. Workers asleep at their stations, safety alarms ignored, and barrels of glowing waste dumped in public spaces. It's absurd, sure, but the joke works because it mirrors how companies cut corners when profit comes first. Think of the plant as a symbol, shoddy safety, careless bosses, and workers treated as replaceable parts. It's a cartoon mirror of industries skirting responsibility. The fallout isn't just radiation gags, it's the bigger theme of what happens when accountability disappears and communities absorb the damage. By exaggerating negligence, The Simpsons painted a Reagan-era corporation that valued dollars over lives. It was both comedy and critique, which brings us to the one voice inside the family constantly sounding alarms, Lisa. Number 4, Lisa's environmental warnings.
I'm just wondering, what's the point? How can we sleep at night when there's so much suffering in the world?
Lisa might be the youngest voice in the room, but from the start she sounded more like an activist than a child. Where the adults ignored toxic runoff or the suffering of animals, she called it out with a level of urgency that felt out of step with her age. Inside the show, her warnings were brushed aside as preachy tantrums, teachers rolled their eyes, Homer tuned her out, and even viewers sometimes saw her as the joke. But those rants against pollution and her defense of animal rights read today like trial runs for the climate marches and petitions that define our era. Lisa was mocked for being too serious, yet her lessons linger. She pointed toward awareness that many now see as urgent. Where she spoke in morality, her brother Bart was already shaping rebellion. Number 5, Bart as the rebellion of youth culture.
Oh, well.
Hey, how do you get this thing to play blackjack?
Stop that, you're hurting it.
So how's it supposed to work?
Well,
Boring. Am I on the internet?
no, you can only access the...
Boring. What's that fire for?
The hard drive is crashing at an alarming speed.
Bart wasn't just a cartoon prankster. He was TV's first open act of rebellion that kids saw themselves in. The slingshot, the skateboard, the constant detentions, they made him a symbol of trouble, but also of freedom. Adults fretted about him being a bad influence. Yet that was exactly why kids loved him. Every prank on Principal Skinner, every insult hurled at a teacher, every time he outsmarted Homer. It wasn't just comedy, it was frustration against rules that felt arbitrary. His jokes carried the same energy as graffiti on a wall or music blasted too loud, small protests against systems kids didn't believe in. When Bartmania hit in the early 90s, it wasn't only about merch, it was about a culture ready to celebrate disobedience. Bart wasn't warning us about misbehavior, he was warning us about distrust in authority, born by youth culture itself, and Marge was left to manage the mess. Number 6, Marge, as the stretched caregiver.
I've always said you were a good father. I've always defended you when people put you down. That's for sure. She ain't lying.
Marge might be the quietest Simpson, but her silence carried weight. She absorbed the chaos around her, balancing Homer's irresponsibility, Bart's defiance, and Lisa's constant questioning in a way that made her less a background figure and more a pressure gauge. The calm smile hid a character pulled thin, one who only snapped when the load became impossible. Episodes that showed her cracking under strain weren't random gags, they reflected the breakdowns many caregivers experience when invisible work piles up. She managed the house, the parenting, and the emotional labor no one else wanted. Before burnout was a buzzword, Marge was already modeling it. Her story foreshadowed millions of women labeled the default parent, carrying unpaid stress with little acknowledgement. In that sense, Marge was prophetic, forecasting what happens when caregiving support is missing. Even the family's dog became part of that survival equation. Number 7, Santa's Little Helper equals family as survival. What does a washed-up greyhound have to do with survival? Everything. When the family stumbles into their worst Christmas, no gifts, no bonus, nothing left to show for it, they take in Santa's Little Helper instead. It isn't a polished story of holiday triumph, it's a household clinging to hope in the smallest form. This dog isn't decoration. He represents the kind of resilience you can't buy. A losing race dog, given up by the world, becomes another member of the family at the very moment they feel stripped bare. That's not comedy, it's a statement. Families under economic pressure lean on bonds, on loyalty, on care that can't collapse with a paycheck. Santa's Little Helper set the tone. Resilience comes from each other, and against that backdrop of survival, the next shadow waiting over them embodied pure, predatory power, Mr. Burns. Number 8, Mr. Burns equals Reagan-era capitalism.
Exactly. All we ask is preferential treatment because of my fabulous wealth.
May I see?
Oh, see with your eyes, not with your hands.
Mr. Burns might be TV's sharpest symbol of greed. He isn't just the bad guy with a creepy laugh. He's capitalism in human form, shuffling through hallways ancient, selfish, and untouchable. His wealth never trickles down. It only piles higher, while the town around him falls apart. Burns shows what unchecked power looks like, hoarding money, cutting wages, and treating labor as disposable. His age signals generational greed, with one man claiming endless resources while younger workers scramble for scraps. Springfield suffers decay as his mansion grows more grotesque. That imbalance wasn't random. It was a cartoon reflection of Reagan-era economics, where the promise of shared prosperity collapsed into deeper divides. Burns wasn't cartoon evil for its own sake. He was the system turned into a face. Meanwhile, the cracks in Springfield's schools carried that same warning forward. Number 9, the school equals broken institutions. Springfield Elementary might look like harmless slapstick, but every crack in those walls was put there on purpose. The broken chairs, the half-lit hallways, the lunches nobody wanted, they all hinted at a school already running on scraps. What looked like comedy was actually a sharp sketch of neglect. Teachers inside didn't inspire change. They looked exhausted. The kids weren't just unruly, they were repeatedly let down. And in the middle stood Principal Skinner, stiff and clueless, more worried about order than learning. His endless blunders weren't only character flaws, they symbolized the failure of bureaucracy itself. Underfunding, burned-out staff, and kids trapped in a system with no ambition. That's not far from debates about standardization, budget cuts, and ignored communities still happening now. And while the jokes seemed disposable, they were forecasting collapse, which makes Lisa's role even clearer. What if someone had listened? Number 10, Lisa as the voice of progress.
They cannot keep making dolls like this. Something has to be done.
Lisa was never written as background noise. She was progress in its purest form. In a town drowning in chaos, she stood out as the lone compass pointing forward. Her clashes weren't small. She called out sexism, fought for cultural respect, and questioned political systems that most adults ignored. When she ran for class office or stood against unfair traditions, it looked like a child overreaching, but she was rehearsing battles that would soon headline real debates. She pushed ideas of equality, environmental care, and moral responsibility long before they gained traction. To her peers, she was the brainy one, treated as an annoyance rather than an innovator. But that's the trick. Lisa wasn't too early, everyone else was late. And while her warnings carried weight, even the show's quietest jokes were predicting something else: how technology itself would soon reshape daily life. Number 11, technology predictions. One of the show's strangest tricks was how its quick gags about technology slowly became reality. A line tossed into a scene or a sight gag in the background didn't seem important at the time, but then years later you'd notice the world had caught up. Video calls, for example, once looked like science fiction toys for the ultra-rich. On The Simpsons, it was just a joke about awkward conversations made stranger by a screen. Today, it's your everyday work meeting.
Ooh, a text. Let's see. Text message for I am a wiener. As you can all see, I am a wiener.
Autocorrect fails appeared as comedy beats before we even held smartphones, yet now they frustrate us daily. The show wasn't casting spells, it was mapping the direction society already leaned. Satire exaggerated the trend lines, and technology dutifully followed. These moments remind us Springfield wasn't only entertainment, it doubled as a future America in miniature. Number 12, Springfield as America. Springfield doesn't age, and that's the trick. The town stays frozen while the real world shifts around it, making every rerun oddly current. No matter the decade, Springfield adapts because it was designed as a mirror, not a timeline. Look around the town and you'll see the pieces of an entire country. The power plant stands in for big business. The church maps faith's grip on community. The bar shows working class escape. Even the school, the cops, and the mayor's office operate like scaled-down versions of national institutions. What makes it work is the illusion of smallness. Each setting looks ordinary, yet together they create a full simulation of national life. Springfield wasn't just a cartoon stage set, it became a miniature America, rebuilt every week to reflect current debates. That town always hinted at wider cultural tides still to come. Number 13, The Simpsons predicted cultural shifts. By the late 80s and early 90s, few believed a cartoon could shift culture itself. The Simpsons proved otherwise. Satire wasn't just mocking the moment, it was shaping the language people used, embedding itself into daily conversation in ways that felt invisible until later. What's striking is how early it generated cultural battles that still rage today. The controversy over Apu's stereotypes hinted at the fights over representation we now see across media. Flanders morphing from decent neighbor into parody showed how characters, and by extension institutions, get flattened by overexposure. Bartmania? That was meme culture before memes, mass-producing identity through jokes. Even endless debates over what counts. As canon forecasted modern fandom politics, these weren't simple missteps, they were previews. The Simpsons didn't just predict presidents or gadgets, it forecasted the cultural weather we still live in. The Simpsons turned satire into a roadmap. Across money struggles, broken schools, greedy bosses, and culture wars, the show laid out how America would bend in the decades ahead. It wasn't guessing, it was holding up a mirror sharp enough to see tomorrow. So here's the real question. Which prediction shocked you the most? Drop a comment and let me know. And if you've been enjoying this breakdown, hit that subscribe button. There's more coming. Maybe cartoons don't just reflect reality, maybe humor, stripped of rules, is the clearest tool civilization has for spotting its own future.
Well, I have the feeling you'll be dropping the charges.
Ooh, the painter's moved your desk, sir.
Oh, yes.